Civil engineering in China's mountainous west is clearly not for the faint-hearted. This is part of a 100-kilometre stretch of highway in Guizhou province, which has 120 bridges and 17 tunnels. It's a challenging project, with building costs on average $8 million per kilometre. Over the next 15 years, China intends to build a further 40,000 kilometres of motorways, most like here in the country's less developed regions. This would complete an 85,000-kilometre grid with the aim of attracting investors further inland and getting produce and natural resources out to the markets in other regions in other countries.
The goal of the Chinese government is to have every city with more than 200,000 people connected to a highway, connected to a port. And that will therefore make it possible for the first time for these local economies to export efficiently.
The Chinese government's view is that developing road transport infrastructure and industry is vital for China's economic, social and political stability. While labour here is cheap, poor roads make the supply chain expensive. In China, logistics consume 19% of the GDP, compared to just 9% in the United States. That's why investment is concentrated near the coast, where fewer than 30 cities produce more than 80% of the country's exports. As a result, the average annual income of $500 in the east is 5 times more than in the west, and that's divisive.
The capital and investment mainly flows to China's developed eastern region, and this makes the whole country develop in an imbalanced way. This is not good for the country's unity, nor its stability.
Beijing recognises the dangers. So even if new highways in the poorer west are quiet today, the government is taking the long view and remains committed to transport as an economic driver. Consequently, in the 5 years up to 2002, countrywide annual road expenditure more than doubled to $20 billion. There are now over 8 million trucks operating in China, with the transport sector hauling 9 times more freight than in the 1980s when the country opened up.
In China, there are more than 40 million employees in the road transport industry. They have made a great contribution to the construction of the national economy and to the welfare of people's livelihoods.
As for carrying people, there has been a 40-fold increase over the past 2 decades, with more than 12 million passenger vehicles on the road today. The total may represent less than 10% of America's road fleet, but China is where the growth is. Take public transport.
You must know that at this time the Chinese coach and bus builders are selling quite about 70,000 buses and coaches each year. Well, we expect, and we are sure of it, that in 5 years the need should be 200,000 new buses and coaches.
This is good news for bus makers like Yutong, which commands 20% of China's market, turning over $700 million. The company says there is a direct connection between building new roads and the bus industry's order books.
The results vary from region to region, but in developed areas with the big populations, for every 100 kilometres of new motorways built, this will produce between 40 to 50 buses.
These rocks will be used to make new roads into a remote Sichuan region that's earmarked for China's rapidly expanding tourism industry. Then there's the challenge beyond China's borders. Its west is flanked by 13 neighbouring nations, but only Chinese trucks can operate on Chinese territory. And to date, Beijing has not been ready to relinquish controls and adopt the United Nations TIR Convention, under which sealed customs-cleared loads can move unhindered from departure to destination. In the meantime, frontline work to develop the country's highway grid continues apace. Road transport is seen here as the precondition for China's west to develop and for the stability of the country as a whole.